You mentioned TikTok. What are the methods of communication, do's and don'ts on TikTok?
Oh yeah. We've done several studies for them, and I think let me think back to that. Some of the main findings we've done for TikTok is that due to the at least one of the findings is that due to the massive engagement, especially at the time we tested, TikTok was on a massive, increase in interest. And I think that what we see these days is that they have now kind of pretty kind of mixed feelings about TikTok, right? Even the younger generation seems to be, holding a little back, especially for different parts of the world that seem to be holding a little back in terms of TikTok. There's a lot of criticisms, and this was before all that happened. So what we saw in the data was that there was an immense kind of engagement factor. We saw that advertising on average was easier to get eyeballs, so it was easier to be seen, and when you advertise on TikTok, and it was easier to get engagement and people to watch for a longer time compared to other platforms. So they kind of blew up the benchmark from the rest of the social media industry, if you like. So I think that was the first thing. What we also discovered was that you had to design your ads in a different way than on typical other types of social media. And as you mentioned before, there are certain types of ads that should be more kind of organic content like. Those ads tended to be kind of viewed more, so to speak. And I think that when people don't differentiate too much between the organic content and the ads, then the ads tend to get more views and more engagement.
But I've heard, I've seen and I've heard like a lot of stories about actually TikTok having very high reach and engagement levels, but very low conversions. And
Yeah.
especially with, like a lot of influencers who were like into millions of followers on TikTok, and then they like went to the conventions and they had nobody show up to their booth. Like
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the, as I mentioned before, is like there's a distinction between how the ad works and how the brand, the benefit for the brand. And I think that ad creatives are not kind of to throw stones at ad creators, but they are very focused on creating a compelling narrative, an engaging narrative that captures people's attention and their interest and engages with them to the extent that it can sometimes be at the cost of the brand communication or the call to action. So I think that and there's tons of different examples from the literature on this that people pay a lot of attention and they remember a lot from the actual ad, but it doesn't translate and doesn't convert people to either click a button or to remember anything from the brand afterwards. So one of the solutions you can do with that is that you can embed the brand or a branded product as a natural part of the narrative. And this is something that is easier for the creatives to work with, is to say that yes, it's almost like product placement in your own ad, to be honest, right? So you see product placement if you look at some of these Transformer movies, for example. You will see Beats by Dre, you will see Apple
Yeah,
or
there's
whatever
a lot of
Sony
it.
computers all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Victoria's Secret, I think it was a bus almost exploding as well. So it's like tons of brands are in even the trailer itself, right? So I think one way to think about this is like maybe you should consider doing a kind of brand placement in your own ad. It should be a natural part of the ad itself. So if a person drinks from a bottle, for example, it should be your branded product. If they wear some shoes, should be your shoes. So repetition on that. And I think that, as you write as well, using influencers is always a risky business for two reasons mainly. One, influencers can go rogue. they can misbehave and they can fall out of popularity in overnight, right? That's one thing. The other thing is also if there's too much of a disconnect in the influencer and the brand, if an influencer is not kind of a truthful and believable representative of your brand, then they won't kind of match it up, so to speak. And we've seen this in, for example, there was an ad by Michael Phelps, making ad for Intel, for example. There was no natural connection between Michael Phelps, the swimmer, and Intel. So that meant that people saw the ad, remembered that it was for they could see that it was Michael Phelps, but basically nobody remembered that it was for Intel. So that means that it was not kind of embedded as a natural part of the ad, and then connection between the influencer or the famous person and the brand was not existent.
I've been, as you were saying, like embed the product in the brand. I was thinking more about like the Coca-Cola commercials, especially the Christmas ones, and the ones where
Yeah.
they pass on the bottle like from one to one, or like they drive the truck. Is that something you're talking about? Like having the actual product be the main kind of purpose of the narrative which is being told.
Yes, yes. And I think that what we shouldn't forget, and this is what one of the things that we see in narratives as well, is that creators want to create this narrative arc, that there's a problem, there's some kind of conflict, and there's a resolution, and that's where the brand or the product comes in, right? And I think that we need to think of that. People don't really usually think in that terms, and we really want to kind of embed the brand as part of the narrative all the way through, not just kind of plastering it on the commercial itself, but embedding it as a natural part of the story. That's like a creative challenge in itself, but I think that creatives are more than happy to take it on.